Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much.
Well, this is The Kitchen Table. I'm your host, Dr. Tino Smith. Every night, many people on the continent of Africa will join together and they just begin to share and reminisce about family values. This is what they do. The ancestors, they share. This is what the kitchen table is all about. It's symbolic to when you're at home, you're comfortable, you're relaxed, no pressure. Mama's there, daddy's there, and you just talking. And a lot of things come at the kitchen table. Well, this is what this show is all about. Today we have an exciting guest. I'm just excited he's here. L.E. Johnson. Before I introduce him to you, I want to thank God for my producers, two great men of God, Brother Campbell and Brother English. They have just gracefully helped me put this show together. And to my camera crew, members of Kingdom Builders, and to my producers and all those that have helped me, Sister Callie and Sister Bolden and Brother Bolden and all the young people. We are at the kitchen table with my host, Doug Jones. Let's give God a praise for all of us at the kitchen table. All right. We are here today because we are really excited. And before I even go any further, L.E. Johnson, usually we have two people at the show, but I think he has so much we can get today, and I want to be able to share so much about this powerful man of God. The first thing I want to do, I want to introduce you to the show, and I want you just to tell us briefly about who you are, and then we'll come back and ask you. I remember when you was a young fella, and you was always just on point as Lester Johnson. And I noticed my return back, you have a change of a title or change of a name. So just share more about that and introduce yourself to the world and to everybody on Facebook Live.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Bishop, for having me here today. I am Lester Earl Johnson. When I went to school in 2000, when I graduated from high school, Battle Creek Central High School, I went to school and something within me said I wanted to be known as L.E. So I started having my classmates call me L.E. And of course, coming back home, everybody's trying to figure out who L.E. is. And so I'm always Lester or L.E. or Lester who wants to be L.E. locally here in the community. But I was born and raised here in Battle Creek, graduated from Battle Creek Central High School in 2000, went to church here in Battle Creek, was active here in my community as a teenager, and went off to school, graduated from the University of Michigan, and began to do community work centered around education and just really mentorship for our teenagers.
Very powerful. But we're going to go a little further on some things, but I want to talk about some current stuff. And Doug, you can help us out on this. I'm not sure how much we're familiar with this, but in the last couple of days, our president, Donald Trump, has shared his discontent or his support regarding two athletes that would not come to the White House, and one that maybe they felt that they should stand and didn't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance or salute the flag. But what was amazing was, and that's been going on for years, the way he responded. He made a comment where he made a derogatory name, and he called them a pretty a name we won't even say on the show. So my question to you, Mr. Johnson, and even to you, Doug, when we have a president that is saying things now that we really don't want our children to hear, whether they say it or not, what's your take on that? If you know anything about that, what's your feeling about that when you have the president of the world or the United States of America calling our celebrities or our icons with those derogatory names? What's your take on that?
I actually feel that it speaks to his character, and it speaks to his understanding or the lack of understanding for his office. A couple of weeks ago, I received a call from you, and it was in regard to some conversations that I was having on social media. And one thing that you said to me was, remain presidential. Those were your words. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was going through quite a tough time with some people in the church realm. And I really wanted to respond in a way that satisfied satisfied that need to have some type of revenge on these individuals that were really just trying to bring my name down. And my bishop said to me, he said, don't respond to that. You're above that. Those activities happen beneath you there. So when you said that to me a couple of weeks ago, it reminded me of what my bishop told me. When you get to a certain level, there's just certain conversations that you don't have. There's certain things that you don't entertain. And so to me, to answer your question, when I think about his comment, he's not acting presidential. He does not have, from what I can see right now, a clear understanding of where he sits at in our community, in our country, and in the world. Because someone at that height, I mean, they look at him as the world leader because he is the president of a world power, the United States of America, and to descend to such a level says that his mentality, he needs to address his mentality. Somebody needs to address it because he's not remaining presidential, if I can use that.
No, that's great. And Doug, before I have you come on, what I saw was, and then you can come back after this part, President Trump took aim at two of the world's most powerful sports league, referring to NBA and NFL, and then some of their most popular athletes, directly inserting himself into an already fiery debate over race, social justice, and activism. Exactly what you said. He's the president, and he's tweeting what these guys are doing. In a speech on Friday, a series of tweets, he told the NFL owners to fire players who do not stand for the national anthem. Now, this is what my challenge and my concern is, and I want to hear, Doug, some of your concern about this too. We're about to get into a campaign, and we're going to talk about your campaign, and no doubt there's a good friend of mine that I'm going to bring on the show, which is I believe a Republican. No, he is a Republican. And you made a good point. You said character. And, sometimes people try to say the Republican parties are the ones with the character, and the Democrats don't have too much character. Then you have independent, and then you have folks that's neutral. But what you think about that, Doug, where the president of the United States, and I asked my producer if he could show a picture, and somehow he may be able to show that picture on the screen if it's possible, where there's a picture when Donald Trump ran for president, and everyone was standing, holding their chest, and he was just standing straight up. And there's somewhere, look, that picture right there. Now, what you think about that? Now this is look, this is the same president that is mad at people who will not do the pledge, but look what he's doing right there. So, DJ, thank you for that, producer. I love it, man. I love it. Thank you for that. What you think about that, Doug? That he would just say that?
First of all, I'm not surprised by anything that comes out of his mouth at this point. I think sometimes he just flies off and says things without thinking them through. There's a bigger picture that these guys are trying to express. It's bigger than them not standing for the flag. They're doing it for a reason. What's happening in this country, in the black community. That's where it all started. President Donald Trump never had focus. He never had his hand on the pulse of this country. So he needs to understand where we're going as a country. He needs to understand where we've been. He doesn't have a grasp on the history that we've gone through, So, and it does speak to his character. It's hard to respect a man that just says what he says. Presidents of corporations, you have to watch what you say. Teachers in the classroom. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to hold off your personal feelings.
Yeah.
And sometimes take them to your grave.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he can't do that. But I nothing he does surprises me at this point.
So if there's anyone watching me that is on the Republican persuasion, and this is not a Republican, Democrat, Independent type of show today, but I am really interested in hearing some of your concerns, or how do you justify that behavior? And if you want to do the research, you can do that. But I would love to hear your comment about that. I'm going to spend more time with Pastor L.E., but I really want to know what you thought about. So then he comes back and say, because Stephen Curry is taking too long or hesitating in coming to the White House, he tweets back and said he withdrew his invitation. Now, that's what the president did. Your president invited you. You took too long to respond. He comes back and says, nah, you can't come back. What you think about that? I mean, I know it's presidential, but I mean, just how do we make sense to that to our young children? How we do that?
It's hard to make sense of that because I guess I was trained to be a leader that stands above disappointment. And then of course it's tit for tat kind of a thing.
Right.
And then going back to this whole ideal of remaining presidential, him coming or these individuals coming to the White House doesn't increase the status of the White House or make the White House or the president, gain brownie points, if I can use that. Them coming to the White House increases their status.
Yes.
So as the president, of course, you feel some type of way because you're the president and you invite someone and they're supposed to be honored. But if they don't accept that honor, or if they don't have a clear understanding of that honor, it's on them. It's not on you. You don't lose anything. You yet remain the president of the United States, and you yet remain the one that holds the authority and really has a monopoly on the power to increase status by inviting people to the White House. So you don't engage in a tit for tat. Oh, he didn't come. Now my ego is stroked the wrong way. So now I got to get back at them. Again, this is pointing back to his character, to his personality, to him not really having an understanding of where he really sits at.
Okay.
And part of that may be attributed to him being one with money, as we say. Okay. So he has a lot of money. With money comes power. He's a businessman. So, you go back and forth in the business world. But when you're talking about seats of royalty, if you will, seats of high status, that's just not something that you engage in.
And we're going to talk about that as you go forward in the position that you plan on running for. So this is the last piece I want to bring up. So then it goes on to say, speaking in Huntsville, Alabama, on a Friday, the president used this expletive to describe a player or players who kneel or sit during the anthem. That's what he said. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespect our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now? You're fired.
Again.
Now, this is your president. This is your America. America. God shed his grace on thee.
Wow.
This is what he did. How do you tell your 9-year-old? We're using words that we don't even supposed to use. Republicans, talk to me. Say something. Go ahead, Doug. What you think?
Bishop, again, it's not about the flag. It's not about disrespecting the country. It's about showing everybody and bringing awareness to what's happening in this country. It's got nothing to do with disrespecting the flag. And so they're trying to make it out of something that it's not, you know. And for the record, Stephen Curry declined the invitation before President Trump pulled it back. So maybe he did that to save face. I don't know. But, you know, so what do you tell your 9, your 10-year-old kid? You tell them what's right and what's wrong, you know? And as they grow, they will never forget what you taught them. They might sway one way or the other a little bit, but they're always going to remember what you told them, you know? Donald Trump isn't a model president. You know, we've never seen a guy in office like this president we have currently.
So we lost our respect for office. Unfortunately, preachers have made mistakes. Doctors made mistakes. Lawyers made mistakes. Professionals have made mistakes. So now, LE, to my understanding, you are running at large for a position in the Calhoun County area. Tell us about that. Tell us what you're running. Tell us the district. And then tell us how we can know more about it. And then I'm going to come back and ask a few questions about what's your platform. You know, Donald Trump won. He won. He won the majority. They say he didn't win the majority, but he won the majority. They say he didn't. Who really knows? But he got a lot of votes. So tell us about what you're planning on doing and what election are we talking about. This is your time to let us know about what LE is doing.
I am running for City Commission.
City Commission. Okay.
Battle Creek City Commission.
Battle Creek City Commission, okay.
Battle Creek City Commission is made up of 9 seats, 5 of which have representation from each of the wards within our city.
Okay.
And 4 of them represent the at-large community.
Okay.
And so I am running for one of the at-large seats for the commission. So I will not represent a particular ward. I will represent, in a way, the community of Battle Creek.
So let me get this at-large understanding, because I was once a part of that. District 2 or Ward 2? Is it called District 2 or Ward 2?
Ward 2.
Ward 2 has typically been represented by an African American.
This is true.
Right now, the current person is Miss Ward Gray, correct?
Correct.
And then we had the great late Bill Boris a while back.
Mm-hmm.
The great late Reverend Bullock.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had my good friend Tony
Walker.
Mr. Tony Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Who came after him? Because I was gone. Do you know the gap? Did anybody know who was after Tony Walker? Was that Miss Ward, or was there somebody between? And if anybody knows the show, let me know. Was there a person between Tony Walker and Miss Ward Gray, or Miss Gray came right after Tony?
Lynn came after Tony.
Okay. So with that being said, we've always had one. Have there ever been an African American at large?
I can't say conclusively that there's never been an African American at large. I can say with a bit of assurance that there has not been an African American at large within the last 20, maybe 30 years.
Wow. So, for you to win this position, LE, you're pulling from the whole county or the whole, what area is that? So we know. What area?
The city of Battle Creek, Lakeview comprises.
So you have to have a whole. Now, are there other individuals running against you?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that there are 7 candidates.
Okay.
7 candidates running for 4 at-large seats, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So why you want to be an at-large commissioner, LE?
I believe that our local government should, for one thing that I totally embrace as a philosophy is the ideas that behind diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
And I believe that
that's a powerful word. Diversity.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Equity.
And
inclusion.
Now, I may want you to elaborate on that inclusion because that could be interpreted many ways. So I might want you to elaborate. What do you mean by inclusion?
What I mean by inclusion is, especially in the context of government,
okay,
and our city commission, is that everything that the leadership of this community decides on, as far as policy, as far as opportunities, it should be filtered through this lens of, is everyone actually included?
Okay.
Does everyone have the opportunity to participate or benefit from this?
I understand. Good point. Okay, good point. Okay, so back to your platform. So what you want to continue to do those 3 things, so that means I could vote for you. Anyone that's in the Battle Creek area can vote for you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so and when is this election? November
7th.
November 7th.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Are you? Do you have a campaign office yet, or is that something you're going to be doing later, or what?
Well, I don't have a campaign office per se.
Okay.
I'm going to be doing several or hosting several opportunities where community members can converse with myself. I also hope to host I don't want to call it a debate, but more of a conversation with others that are running so that community members can come out and hear more about what we believe and ask questions.
Well, I would love to, I'll talk to my producer, but I would love to, if you are one of the candidates that's running in an at-large district, I would love to have you come on the show and tell us more about your platform and bring you along with LE so we can talk to each other. That'd be a great idea. Also, I noticed on Facebook you do a lot of travel abroad. You are part of one of the oldest Pentecostal denomination. Have great respect for the Church of God in Christ. We call it Kojic, to a connection. And I notice you are very much involved in that. What is your position in that organization? And when I see you in those foreign countries, what are you doing? Tell us about Lester LE in that area.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I serve as a pastor, of course, you stated that. But I also serve as a superintendent in the Church of God in Christ in Western Michigan jurisdiction. So my jurisdictional bishop and prelate is Bishop Nathaniel Wells. He's a general board member. He is one of the 12 men that lead the Church of God in Christ globally. And his assignment is Western Michigan. So for a geographical area, basically that's everything west of Lansing, so going up and down. And I serve as a superintendent for this region of that western jurisdiction, Albion, Jackson, Battle Creek, Kalamazoo area. That's my primary assignment. As one of the leaders within Western Michigan jurisdiction, I am also assigned as the director of missions activities for the jurisdiction. So it is my assignment on behalf of our jurisdictional prelate to oversee and to create a mission strategy for this region of the Brotherhood.
Okay.
As a part of that strategy, I'm not solely looking at opportunities to impact Western Michigan.
Okay.
I'm also looking at opportunities to impact parts of the world that exist outside of the United States. And the region of the world that I'm focused on and assigned to is Northern South America, the, as we call it, Andean region of South America, primarily in the country of Colombia. And our ministry spreads to Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Bolivia.
Listen, in your mission, is there a certain demographic that you guys are targeting with your mission, your duties, or is it youth? Is it, if you don't mind, maybe elaborating a little bit, because we have a real need to reach young people, right now in our communities, and any kind of help, any type of assistance they can get is it was good for them.
Yes, sir. So I primarily, and again, my filter is diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is why I'm running for the city commission. Not necessarily because I'm African American, but I want to be the voice that represents or helps our commission to be diverse. And specifically, I focus on individuals that are less likely to have a voice. So sometimes they call them marginalized or disenfranchised. So when you talk about youth or the demographic that I primarily focus on, in this current season, it's youth and women. And so in Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, it's not necessarily Afro-Colombians or, those who are natives. But I go to the regions where they're the poorest, where the educational levels are the lowest. And I look at opportunities to impact those communities. And what I found is the greatest amount of impact that I can create has been through the education opportunities, as well as the social entrepreneurship and the business entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So Lester, when I came back in town after 30 years, the last time I remember you was a young fella, and I'm just, first of all, I'm very proud of you. I'm very impressed at your accomplishments. And so you presented something to me and some other community leaders, and we were invited to something that was held at the Battle Creek Urban League. I'm not sure if you're the actual spearhead of that, but tell us more about that, and tell us what are you trying to accomplish, or what are we trying to accomplish in that group? Tell us more about that. I want everybody to know about the group, and then plugins. Who are we looking for, and what are we trying to accomplish? If you don't mind talking about that.
Yeah. So I would like to preface my response to that by saying that the power of democratic societies is the participation of its citizens.
Okay.
So when you're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can have several organizations, and we do locally have several organizations that are doing this work, trying to bring about equitable outcomes, okay, right? So this goes beyond just equality, okay, which gives everybody access. This levels the tables. So I made a statement the other day. I wish I had a verbatim, but I don't. But basically, I was saying that equity doesn't create unfair circumstances or the work of equity. What equity does is it addresses the work of racism and segregation and the intentional work to take things away from minorities to bring about an unbalance, and equity puts those things back so that we can balance the scale, right? And so we have a lot of organizations in our community working towards equitable outcomes. Battle Creek Public Schools, United Way, I mean, you name it. We have organizations that don't even have titles, don't have incorporations, working on bringing about equitable outcomes, working on bringing everybody to the table, which is inclusion, working on making sure that diverse people, diversity, are at those tables. However, equity, the work of equity, to some extent, almost becomes undermined when those that it's working for doesn't participate, or they don't strengthen their muscle to be a partner in balancing out the scales. And so what you're referring to is the African American Collaborative,
Okay.
which is an initiative. It's not an organization.
Okay.
It's an initiative within the African American community that mobilizes both formal and informal leaders, which is to say, you don't have to be a pastor, you don't have to be a president of an organization. You can be a well-wisher that sits on your front porch and just mentors little boys walking up and down your neighborhood, or have a prayer group, or have a reading group, what have you. But it mobilizes informal and formal leaders and strategizes on ways that we as an African American community can partner with the community at large to bring about more equitable outcomes, not only for ourselves, but for our community.
How can people know more about this? I mean, it's on the show now. We're telling everyone now, but what other way are we doing to get the word out, or that's not part of the agenda? Is it like the Lodge brothers, those who really understand order out of chaos, is you don't ask, you don't invite people. They look at the light, they see the light, and they join on their own. Is that the same way? Do they just hear about it and come, or we go and solicit the audience? We solicit the people.
Well, right now we're working on some intentional strategies
Okay.
on how to get more people involved. In the meantime, we are just praying that word of mouth continues to be the mechanism where people really learn about the African American Collaborative. So we're using email, and we're using social media, but we're hoping that over the next couple of weeks, because our goal is to, specifically in this phase we're in a 60-day phase.
Okay.
So the collaborative has been moving in 60-day phases.
Okay.
So in this 60-day phase, this window, we want to double.
Okay.
We want to double our participation. So we have about 30 individuals from within the community that come sporadically to our monthly meetings.
Okay.
Of which our monthly meetings are typically the second Friday of every month, but they fluctuate because what we're trying to do is figure out what's best for the community.
Okay.
And so we have about 30 or so, but we want to double that. We got to a place where we got some consistent people, and we moved through the summertime, and people work, and people have families, people have their own organization. So trying to balance all of that. So we got to a place of a little bit of a consistency, but what we want to double that and make sure that we do a really deep dig into the community to make sure that as many of our people within our community are at the table to be part. So I gave you the long answer. I apologize, but we're using email, social media, but we're really trying to develop a strategy to reach more people. So while I'm at the kitchen table, while I'm live, if you are somebody in this community that feels like you're a leader, it doesn't matter if nobody has acknowledged you as a leader. If you feel that you are a leader, if you feel that you have purpose, if you feel that you have a vision to move this community forward, you are welcome to join the African American Collaborative. You can call the Urban League at 269-962-5553, or you can email me, lejohnson@ulbc.org. to get information.
Awesome.
And of course, you can contact Bishop because he has been one of the consistent contributors and members of this initiative.
Amen. Let me go back to the little lightness, back to our football situation. So, by my son Doug and Pastor L.E., with the potential of, maybe making the league. I'm very conscious of the pattern. So when I heard Donald Trump suggest to the owners that they should do ABC, what y'all think the first thing I did? I mean, just if you know anything about me, he said, I want the owners to do ABC. What's the first thing you would think of? Forget about what you think I said. When your president addressed the owners, the first thing I did was I wanted to find out how many black owners we have in the NFL.
I don't know what that answer is. I don't know if there is any.
Well, so I did my little research. If you can help me out on Facebook Live, there was once an African-American male, because my computer shut down. He had 40% ownership of the Minnesota Vikings. He's no longer in that position. So to my knowledge, unless you want to correct me on Facebook Live, to my knowledge, there's not one black owner in the NFL. So when President Trump was talking to the owners, what does that look like to y'all? I mean, what does that look like, Doug?
I don't think the owners pretty much would respond to President Trump telling them to fire an NFL football player. If I was an owner and the President of the United States wanted me to do that, you got a job that's more important than what's going on my football field.
You really believe that?
I really believe that. Okay. I do. They had owners, general managers out there locked arms with their football players because, again, those football players help pay them.
Okay.
You can't go out there and start firing quarterbacks and wide receivers and Tom Brady's, and who's gonna come to see your football games.
So what's your feeling, Doug or LE, about the I may have the persuasion of let's boycott. Let's just quit watching the game. Is that against Trump or that's against the owners, or we really shouldn't get caught up in that? I mean, is there a beef with that? I mean, the young man that is basically unemployed because he kneel, he don't fight, he ain't cursing like Donald Trump, he ain't doing nothing wrong, he just would kneel during the national anthem, and he can't get a job in the NFL, and all the owners are white. Does that sound like anything to you? Or that's just me? I'm going to say it again. It could just be me. All the owners are white. Okay, pretty good. I'm proud of them. You get a brother who, a quarterback, and he can't get a job. Is that okay? I mean, is that wrong or right? So you got people going around saying, well, let's boycott. Let's not watch the game. What you think about that, Lester? I mean, is that something, like you said, stay presidential, I ain't going to worry about it. Doug, is that something, we should just pray about it. We don't even worry about that. That's not our problem. I'm worried about Kellogg's. I'm worried about the initiative or my campaign. I'm worried about Kingdom Builders Worldwide. I ain't gonna worry about it. This brother can't get a job, Doug. Lester.
I think before one responds, they have to make sure they have to make sure that they really know what they're responding to.
Okay.
And what the proper response is. In other words, what's going to get us the outcome that we want.
Okay.
So, are we really responding to this gentleman not having a job, and we need to respond to that, right? Or are we responding to this gentleman's basic rights?
Basic right.
As an American being undermined.
And penalized.
Right. And so, if boycotting the football game helps us to address the fact that this gentleman's rights have been attacked, and I can't think of the word I want to use right now, but I'll use that for right now. If that's going to get us the right response and allow us to address, because money hurts.
Money hurts.
And you're not talking about no chicken dinner money.
Popeye.
No. You're talking in the millions, right?
Yeah.
Now, if that's going to address the main issue, which is this gentleman's right, because at the end of the day, if they can punish this man freedom of speech, then that sends a signal to other people. And that's why we came here. Well, we didn't. We came here because we were forced. But that's why their ancestors came here,
Right?
So that they can have freedom. So let's take a moment. Let's put the black thing on pause.
Okay, on pause.
And let's address the larger thing, which is our freedom of speech, which then goes into freedom of religion and freedom of this. So this is freedom.
That's been taken from this young man.
Right. So let's address freedom.
Okay.
And I feel personally, if we don't make this a black thing, because we can deal with the black thing on the back end of the freedom thing, and get more accomplished. If we focus on our freedoms that are being, challenged here, then we make this a community-wide, a country-wide agenda. Because if you can mess with his freedoms, then somehow or another you can mess with somebody else's freedom, and then we have a major problem.
Okay, good stuff.
So now we can address freedom by boycotting these games and taking millions of dollars, because when people don't watch, then they don't get commercial money and all kind of stuff. And for that reason, if we can boycott and really address freedom, then we can get some things done. But if we just get mad, oh, you fired him, so we're not going to watch the game, and then after 6 months you start watching the game again because you forgot he got fired.
Good stuff.
Then you're going tit for tat, and you're not going to get anything accomplished.
So, man, that's good. I'm enjoying this. So, Deacon, how do you tell those football heads, the guys that they talk about football as if they're on the team? You probably got friends like that, relatives like that. How do you tell those cats that it's Monday night that LE is saying, and I'm endorsing, hey, y'all, let's not watch it for this man's freedom? How do you get him to not do that? How do you get him not to do that? Is it possible?
How do I get friends?
Those guys that just, they're football, they're Monday night fanatics, man. They're Sunday fanatics, man. They're gonna watch the Cowboys. You hear me? They're gonna watch the Cowboys, man. And don't even talk about the big house. They're going to Michigan. So that's probably NCAA. So I guess we're not worried about them yet. So let's not touch the big house, because folks may get mad at me and not even come to my church. So let's leave him.
Yeah, I might have to walk off.
Right, you may have to walk off.
I'll go blue.
He go blue. But what about the NFL, really?
Well, first they have to understand why.
Why?
Just to ask them to not to do it, they have to see the purpose. And they got to see why you're doing what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. And I think you were kind of referring to the Kaepernick situation.
Absolutely.
He did it alone when he first did it. He was standing alone. Now the numbers have grown. So, and now there's a lot more attention on what's happening right now. But to boycott, to do a sit down or not watch football would make a huge impact on the game. And it would change, or at least make the owners and others think about what is really happening, what is really going on. It's an awareness thing. And again, looking at the big picture is why? Why are we doing what we're doing? So you don't do something without really understanding fully why you're doing it. You shouldn't. So for me to go to a relative or a friend and say, this is what we're doing, this is why, they got to see it. They can't just hear it, but they got to see it and understand why we're doing what we're doing. It's more than just trying to convince them.
And my question is, okay, and of course I'm just down here in Battle Creek and I really don't understand all the logistics of it. And I don't like football, so it wouldn't hurt me either way. But why boycott football, right? And why punish yourself Because at the end of the day, what's happening from my perspective is the people that didn't appreciate what the gentleman did are winning. And to some extent, the leaders in the NFL are winning. And the people who are losing to some extent are the people that enjoy watching football, who will be trying to find something else to do with their lives. And the football players who are not getting paid, right? They're not getting paid for being sit out, right? So he doesn't have a contract. So the power is not in the owner of the football league, right? The power is really in the football players.
Right.
So
the players.
What you all need to do is get together and figure out how you are going to continue making money. Because the people are not paying to watch your owners.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying to watch you.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's more about us as Americans strategizing. These people have a narrow mind. They don't have a real understanding about what freedom is. And so what we need to do is leave them over there and reorganize over here and keep going. Why should football stop? And of course, there's probably some layers that I don't know about. But why should football stop? Why should the pleasure of me, for that matter, watching football stop? Because of a few narrow-minded people. Continue on. Go someplace else.
I agree. Totally agree. And I don't think a sit down would be the answer. And I was just answering your question if that was the case. But again, I think people need to look at what's really happening in this country. So more professional athletes who have a lot of influence are starting to speak with their actions, like Kaepernick did. Just, not really pleased about what's happening in this country. And the reason why Stephon Curry did not accept that invitation is because of what Donald Trump did or said about the riots, about taking down the statue. Where was that at? Was that Virginia? West Virginia.
Yeah.
So it's things like that, and it's other things. It's the big picture. So it has nothing to do with disrespecting the flag. It's a statement. They're trying to bring some awareness to what is really happening in this country.
So now let's go back to local. I have a church. You have a church. You're working in the city, and locally, we have major companies folding, downsizing, jobs being moved out. Locally now, how do we, and I'm going to make a suggestion, to get the attention of these companies that's closing. I guess there's things with, I don't have Ralston correct name, they're a different name now, but the Ralston, okay? And we read about some things at Kellogg's.
I believe it's
Treehouse. And we read things about Kellogg's and things that's going on in the Fort Custer. You want to be a district at large. I have a church, and I have people saying, well, I love that you're back, but I got to move out of town to get work. What can we do about that? I mean, is there something that I was a part of the Mayor Bobrovsky years ago when they brought in that whole thing at the Fort Custer. They created a relationship and brought in all those organizations. And I guess to a degree, it was very helpful. Not sure how many people are impacted now, but what's your take as a candidate? How can we keep people in Battle Creek if we need those basic things?
Again, I think this goes back to my statement I was making earlier. We cannot allow ourselves to empower such a small group of individuals to control our lives and our futures. And so, whereas Kellogg's, Ralston, Macy's, for that matter, which is now gone, JCPenney's, which is now gone, these pillars in the community, if you will, they have really helped to move us along economically, and we've become dependent upon them to some extent, to the extent that many feel that they have to leave the city to find work. And I believe that as a commission, we have to create a economy, a culture, an ecosystem where we are dependent upon ourselves and interdependently connected.
And when you say ourself, who are you referring to?
The individuals in the community.
Okay.
So, for instance, Macy's closed, and I was in a focus group with some teenagers, and they said, "Oh, the mall is going to close. We don't have a mall anymore. Macy's is gone." And they said Macy's is gone, and the mall is going to close, and Battle Creek is not going to exist anymore. And I asked them, I said, what can be in Battle Creek, or what can be taken out of Battle Creek? What all can be taken out of Battle Creek, and Battle Creek yet remains to be Battle Creek? And at the end of the day, to make a long story short, we came to the conclusion that we as the community members make this city. The businesses, we employ the businesses to employ us to make a living for ourselves. But we as a commission, I feel, has to create circumstances where our community can thrive. Whether we have a major company like Kellogg's, Ralston, or Macy's, whether we have firekeepers, whether we have chain restaurants like McDonald's, Taco Bell, whatever, we have to create a circumstance conducive for success for our residents, no matter who's here. So that means we have to invest in educational systems that produce forward thinkers, that produce entrepreneurs, that produce people that can create circumstances for themselves that make them thrive.
You said something, you and I had a great conversation a while back, and I would like for you to maybe expound on that. My time is geared in, but expound real briefly on, we talked about generations. We talked about Deacon Jones and I, we all fell in that last baby boomer. Then 65, it ends. 1965, the baby boomers end. And then after the 66, they became a generation, and then the millenniums. Mm-hmm. And that's what's big right now, the millenniums. Mm-hmm. And there's a disconnect between the millenniums and the other generations. About 2 minutes, because my time is about, how can we bridge that gap? Because you fall in what generation, and how can you connect with me and I can connect with you?
I fall, hard to do this in 2 minutes. I fall right on the edge of Generation X and millennials.
Okay.
So depending on the social scientists, I can be a millennial or a Gen X.
Okay.
There has to be, from my perspective, a great deal of understanding, as well as responsibility taking, because a lot of millennials don't know what it means to work hard. You know, we come up and where everybody made the basketball team. You know, everybody made the football team. There were no losers. You know, everybody got good grades. Everybody passed. No, what you mean? He can't go to the third grade? No, that would be unthinkable. So you have a generation of people who have very weak work ethics. They have very little appreciation for working hard and obtaining things in life. And so now with that millennial generation entering the workplace, you have supervisors who don't know what to do, with a whole staff of millennials who don't feel they have to work to go to the next level. I've been here 6 months. I'm ready for my raise. I'm ready for my elevation in this company. You haven't done anything. You haven't contributed. And so now you have all this frustration. You have baby boomers, if you will, people your age, if I can say so, frustrated, sitting even at a community table with millennials who have a problem with yes, sir, and no, sir, and yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and you just a man like I'm a man. And well, that just didn't fall out the sky. You have a generation of parents who train their kids that's just a man, and you got to respect my son. And what do you mean my son is in timeout? Who cares if he didn't do what he was supposed to do? And who cares that he's disrupting the learning process? And so you have a lot of, and it's like I said, it's hard to put this in 2 minutes.
No, you can't. Right. We got to come back and talk more.
We got to come back.
Yeah.
But you have a lot that has gone on in our generation. And now the world is trying to figure out, what do we do? Well, first thing you have to do is you have to stop training this Generation Y like you train Generation Millennials. But there's going to have to be a lot of understanding and a lot of grace in order to merge and work together. Because if we let the friction and the lack of understanding hinder us, then we'll just be divided and we won't be able to move forward.
Hey, y'all, my time is up. I'm telling you, L.E. Johnson, you gave us a plethora of knowledge and wisdom. We definitely got to bring you back on that generational subject. To my co-host, thank you. Again, I always leave the show by connecting with our families. You got to know your ancestors. You got to know where you came from. You have to always have a map and a globe. You got to know what you're doing. I always give honor to my mother, but before I recognize my mother, I always recognize her parents, my grandparents. Ruby Elizabeth Perry and Leo Dale Perry Sr. Those are my grandparents. And on my father's side, the great late Hugh Smith Sr., but I always honor the great late Gussie Smith and Edward West Smith, where I got my name. Listen, honor to my wife Nicole, and to my babies, my children, and to this wonderful staff, the Lester L.E. Johnson. I'm commending you. I support you. We're going to pray now. We're going to believe that God is going to continue to inspire you. To my host, thank you. Father, we honor you. We thank you for this moment. We thank you for this show. We thank you for the wisdom in this man, L.E. Johnson. I'm asking you, God, to allow this platform today, give him another light by the audience. They see a reason he has a voice. He should be heard. We support him, and we thank you for him now. Thank you for this program. Thank you for my host, bless his family, and all those involved. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I need some help, y'all. Can't do it alone. Yeah. Wake up, everybody. Wake up, everybody. Get up.
AccessVision, your voice, your community.